The burning sky. The sky over Varnis Colony burned the color of rusted metal. Not from weather. Not from sunset. From ships, too many ships, hanging in the atmosphere like blades. Administrator Sale RHYKK stood inside the colony's command hall, staring at the tactical wall. Sale was not a soldier. Sale was a builder of cities, a signer of trade papers, a person who believed the galaxy had rules. But rules did not matter when the Car Dominion arrived. The Car were tall, armored, and silent. Their ships were black triangles that moved with perfect discipline. They did not threaten. They did not negotiate. They simply landed troops and began to cut the world into pieces. Around Sale, exhausted officers whispered updates. The colony's defense grid, designed to scare pirates, not stop an empire, was failing district by district. Eastern Shield node is gone, said a communications officer, voice cracking. We have, maybe 5 hours until the central dome collapses. Sale's throat felt dry. Any response to our distress signal? Silence answered first. Then the officer forced the words out. The council acknowledged receipt. They are discussing options. Discussing. While children coughed in shelters and hospitals ran out of power. Sale pressed both hands on the command table. Contact the nearby fleets. Anyone. Another officer shook her head, eyes red from smoke and lack of sleep. The Telluan League says they can't risk provoking the Car. The Mero Combined says they will send humanitarian aid, once the situation stabilizes. After we're dead, Sale whispered. The message that no one answered. Varnis had sent calls to everyone. Every language. Every frequency. Every emergency channel. Help us. Please. And the galaxy responded with excuses wrapped in polite words. Sale watched a feed from the lower city. Car ground troops moved between buildings like shadows. They carried weapons that did not flash or roar. They simply touched walls, and walls melted. They touched doors, and doors turned to smoke. There was no drama in it. Only certainty. A junior officer, barely old enough to be assigned to command duty, spoke softly. Administrator, should we begin the final evacuation to the deep shelters? Sale's mind went to the deep shelters, tunnels dug for storms and earthquakes. Not for an enemy that could melt steel. Yes, Sale said. Move everyone. Every family. Every school. Every hospital that can travel. And if they dig? The junior officer asked. Sale didn't answer. Because there was no good answer. The human name in old records. Later, when the lights dimmed and the dome over the city flickered, Sale walked to the archive wall, where old Alliance files were stored. Most of them were dusty history. Most of them were forgotten. A historian attached to the colony, Elian Vose, stood nearby. Elian had been quiet all week, like someone remembering something they had tried to forget. Sale glanced at him. You keep looking at the archive. What are you hoping to find? Elian hesitated, then spoke. There is a story. A strange one. From decades ago. Sale's voice was bitter. Unless that story contains a fleet, I don't want it. It contains humans, Elian said. Sale blinked. Humans? Earth humans? Most species don't think about them, Elian continued. They are new. Loud. Undiplomatic. Too creative for their own safety. The Council calls them unstable. The Car call them annoying. And? Sale asked. Elian swallowed. There was a mining disaster on Station Rel 9, long ago. The Council debated. The big fleets refused. And then one human ship arrived, small, ugly, patched together, yet it did what no one else dared. It went inside the radiation zone and pulled survivors out by hand. Sale stared at him. So humans rescue miners. That's your miracle. Elian's eyes held a strange intensity. No. The miracle is what happened afterward. The humans didn't ask for payment. They didn't claim territory. They didn't even demand honor. Sale felt anger rise. Then why didn't they become a major power? Elian's voice dropped. Because they don't care about looking powerful. They care about doing what they think is right, and surviving long enough to do it again. The collapse begins. An alarm screamed. The central map flared red. Central dome destabilizing, someone shouted. Car carrier is charging a plasma bore. They're going to punch a hole straight through the city. Sale turned back to the wall display. A massive car carrier hovered above the capital district like a dark mountain. Energy gathered under it, twisting into a bright spear. Sale whispered, almost to themselves, "Where is everyone?" The junior officer looked down. The galaxy is watching. Sale felt a cold clarity settle in their chest. The council would record this as a tragedy. There would be speeches later. Monuments. Apologies. None of that would stop the plasma bore. Sale stepped toward the broadcast console. Open all channels. One final message. The officers froze. Administrator. Do it, Sale said, voice steady now. If we are going to die, we die loud. The console warmed under Sale's hands. The camera light blinked. Sale spoke slowly, clearly, for the galaxy and for whoever might still have a conscience. This is Administrator Sale RHYKK of Varnis Colony. We asked for help. We were answered with discussion and concern. Our dome is failing. Our shelters will not hold. We accept extinction. Sale paused, then added the last sentence, because it mattered. Tell Earth, we tried. The broadcast ended. Above the city, the car plasma bore began to descend. And far away, so far that even hope felt silly, something heard that message and did not discuss. Something moved. Car certainty. High Commander Drex Vor of the Car Dominion watched Varnis Colony through a forward viewport, calm as stone. Car strategy was simple: arrive, crush resistance, harvest whatever was useful, leave a warning behind. Fear saved time. But this colony had been strange. Not because it fought well, it didn't. It fought bravely, but poorly. Strange because it screamed for help in every direction and still no one came. Drex respected the honesty of abandonment. The galaxy always talked. The car acted. Plasma bore in position, reported a bridge officer, voice flat. Central dome will fracture in 90 seconds. Drex folded his hands. Begin. The energy spear brightened, painting the clouds beneath the fleet with violent white light. On another display, car ground troops moved toward shelter entrances. They did not rush. They did not need to. The dome would fall, and the city would become open air. Then the harvest would begin. A flicker in the wrong place. A sensor operator tilted their head. Commander, we are receiving an anomaly. Drex did not look away from the city. Define anomaly. Local space distortion. Small. Tight. Like a failed jump. A malfunctioning escape craft. Drex guessed. No, the operator said, and Drex heard uncertainty in the car's voice, a rare thing. It's not moving like any vessel. The anomaly blinked once. Twice. Then every screen on the bridge flickered hard enough to make the lights dim. Static filled the displays, like old noise from ancient devices. Drex's claws tightened. Report. The operator's voice trembled. We've been overridden. The word NO. The static cleared. A single line of text appeared across every car display, in a simple blocky font. No. Drex stared. Trace the signal. Impossible, the operator whispered. It's not coming from a transmitter. It's coming from everywhere. Then space itself folded. Not with a bright flare. Not with a proud arrival. With quiet precision, like a knife sliding from a hidden sleeve. A ship appeared in the empty air between the car fleet and the planet. It was not large, at first glance. But it looked wrong. Its shape was long and thin, like a spear. Its hull was dull grey, covered in burn scars and repair plates. It had no bright markings, no banners, no ceremonial lights. And it was close. Too close. Car doctrine insisted no ship could appear inside a guarded perimeter without being detected earlier. Yet it had. Drex's mouth went dry. Identify. The sensors screamed. Then stuttered. Then went silent for half a second, as if they were afraid. The operator tried again, voice strained. It's broadcasting an ID. A second line of text appeared. ECS Iron Promise, Human Civilian Defense Vessel. Drex frowned. Civilian defense. Another bridge officer snarled. Humans are a nuisance. Destroy it. Drex lifted a hand. Wait. Because something about the ship bothered him. It wasn't its weapons, though it clearly had many. It was the way it sat in space, calm, unmoving, like it didn't care how many guns pointed at it. The first trick. Car cannons rotated. Energy built. Drex watched the human ship and waited for a shield bloom. Instead, the human ship launched a cloud of tiny objects, hundreds of them, glittering like dust. Drones. Someone barked. Point defense, another officer shouted. Car guns fired. The space between fleets turned into a storm of light. Drones exploded, fragments spinning. But the fragments didn't die. They spread. The dust expanded into a wide net across the car formation. Then every car ship's outer hull began to sparkle, like frost forming. What is that? Drex demanded. A systems officer slammed claws into a panel. Our thermal vents are clogged. External temperature is rising. Reactor efficiency dropping. Drex realized the truth with sudden anger. The humans hadn't launched explosives. They'd launched smart debris, particles that glued themselves to vents and heat exchangers. Car ships were built for battle, not maintenance. Their designs were old, proud, and optimized for direct war. They were not built to handle a swarm of clever trash. Weapons charging slower, the officer reported. Heat limits. Drex's gaze snapped back to the human ship. The human ship still hadn't fired. It was simply preparing the battlefield. The voice that didn't beg. A transmission cut through car channels, clean and calm. A human voice, female, steady, without fear. This is Captain Mara Vance of the Earth Cooperative Ship Iron Promise. Drex listened, expecting threats, demands, negotiation. Instead, the human said, "You've had 3 days to stop. You chose not to." A pause. "You're done now." Drex barked, "Fire!" The car fleet unleashed everything, and the human ship disappeared. Not by jumping away. Not by exploding. It simply wasn't there anymore. The shots tore through empty space and struck a car destroyer behind the firing line. The destroyer's shields flared. Then failed. Drex's eyes widened. How? The sensors screamed again. The human ship reappeared, behind the car carrier. Close enough that its shadow fell across the carrier's hull. And then, finally, it fired. Not a beam. Not a missile. A single metal rod, launched at ridiculous speed. It punched through the carrier like it was paper, traveling end to end in a heartbeat. The carrier's plasma bore collapsed. The energy spear flickered and vanished. Below, Varnis Colony's dome trembled, and held for one more breath. Drex's bridge fell silent. One human ship had just stopped a weapon meant to end a world. And it had done it with a piece of metal. Hope returns like a punch. On the planet, Sale watched the tactical wall and didn't understand at first. The plasma bore, gone. A car carrier, damaged. A new symbol on the map, unknown vessel. Then colony comms exploded with screams and laughter mixed together. A ship, someone shouted. A ship just appeared. Sale stepped toward the screen as if pulled by gravity. The symbol resolved into an ID label. Iron Promise. Human. Sale's knees nearly gave out. Elian, the historian, whispered, voice shaking. They heard us. Sale stared at the burning sky, where a grey spear-shaped vessel moved like a ghost. And for the first time in days, Sale felt something dangerous. Not fear. Hope. A captain who hated bullies. Captain Mara Vance stood on the bridge of the Iron Promise, jaw tight, eyes on the enemy fleet. Mara did not look like a legend. She looked like a tired engineer who had slept in her uniform for too many nights. Her ship wasn't new. It was a patched-together defense vessel built from salvaged hull frames, experimental drives, and stubborn human pride. Beside her stood Lieutenant Juno Park, small, sharp-eyed, fingers dancing over a console. "Vent clog swarm is working," Juno reported. "Car cooling efficiency is down 40%. Their heavy cannons are slowing." Mara nodded. "Good. Keep them hot." Another officer, Rajul Soto, glanced at the tactical display. "They're regrouping. They'll try to encircle." "Let them," Mara said. "They think in shapes. We think in problems." The trick inside the trick. The car began to spread, forming a wide net around the planet. Their ships moved like trained predators. Mara watched and smiled without humor. "Juno," she said. "Start Phase 2. Juno hesitated. "Phase 2 is risky." Mara's voice stayed calm. "So is Extinction." Juno nodded and tapped a command. From the Iron Promise's belly, new drones launched, not dust this time, but small shining pods that drifted toward the car fleet. Drexvor saw them and snarled. "Destroy those drones." Carpoint Defense opened fire. Pods burst apart in bright flashes. But inside each pod was something else, thin reflective sheets that unfolded and spread like wings. "Commander," a car officer said, confused. "Those aren't weapons." Drex growled. "Then what are they?" The reflective sheets formed a scattered field between car ships. Then the Iron Promise fired a wideband pulse. The sheets lit up like mirrors, redirecting signals, bouncing sensor pings, twisting distance. Suddenly, the car fleet couldn't agree on where anything was. Friendly ships appeared as enemies. Enemies appeared in 3 places at once. "Target lock failing," shouted a car officer. Drex slammed a claw into the command rail. "Switch to visual range." But visual range in space was a joke. Everything important happened beyond the eye. Mara watched their confusion and spoke softly, almost sadly. "Your empire grew fat on everyone else's caution," she said. "We grew sharp on our own mistakes." A ground fight that wasn't fair. On Varnis Colony, car ground troops pushed toward the shelters. The dome was still unstable, but the human warship had bought time. Sail RHYKK moved through an underground corridor with emergency crews, trying to keep people calm. Children clung to parents. Old workers carried medical packs. Everyone listened to the distant thunder of war above. A colony security leader, Torin Vosk, approached Sail. "Administrator, we can't hold the shelter gates if they breach again." Sail swallowed. "Then we don't fight like them." Torin frowned. "We don't have the weapons." Sail looked at the maintenance tunnels branching through the shelter system. "We have tools." Humans don't fight alone. A new transmission arrived, this one routed through colony comms. Mara's voice filled the shelter speakers. "Varnis Colony, this is Captain Mara Vance. If you can hear me, you're still in the game." Sail grabbed a receiver. "Captain, why are you here?" A pause. Then Mara answered honestly. "Because your last message got forwarded to Earth by a merchant ship. And because some of us still believe too late is just a lie people tell when they don't want to try." Sail's throat tightened. "We have civilians in shelters. Car troops are closing in." Mara's tone sharpened. "Then you keep them alive for 20 minutes. Sail blinked. 20 minutes. "Yeah," Mara said. "That's how long it'll take my crew to do something stupid and brilliant." The promise becomes a weapon. On the Iron Promise, Rajul looked up. "Captain, the car carrier group is charging again. They'll try to crack the dome the old-fashioned way." Mara rolled her shoulders like someone preparing to lift heavy metal. "Bring us closer," she ordered. Juno's eyes widened. "Closer means inside their main kill zone." Mara didn't blink. "Exactly." The Iron Promise accelerated, Not away, but straight toward the densest cluster of car ships. Car cannons turned, confused but eager. Drex Vor hissed. "They are charging us." "Fire!" he roared. The car fleet unleashed a storm of energy, and the Iron Promise opened its side panels. Not to reveal bigger guns. To reveal empty space. Dozens of human cargo containers shot out like a cloud of junk. Drex laughed once, harshly. "Debris? Pathetic." Then Juno whispered on the human bridge, "Containers are live." Mara's eyes stayed on the target. Now. The containers detonated, not with explosive force, but with sudden expansion of thick foam-like material. A human invention meant for industrial safety. In vacuum, it burst outward into glittering, fast-hardening webs that wrapped around car ships like sticky nets. Energy weapons fired and scattered. Ships tried to move and found themselves tangled with neighbors. The car formation, built on perfect spacing, collapsed into chaos. Drex's voice turned furious. "Cut free." But cutting took time. Time the car did not have. Because Mara's next shot wasn't aimed at a ship. It was aimed at the space between ships. She fired a second metal rod at a precise angle. It ricocheted off tangled hulls, bouncing like a pinball of doom, punching holes through reactors and weapon bays. Not random destruction. Calculated, efficient, terrifying. 20 minutes on the ground. In the shelters, Sale heard distant tremors. The dome above flickered, but did not fall. Torin Vosk led a small team through maintenance tunnels with cutting torches and coolant lines. They reached a narrow access choke where car troops were expected to enter. "Do we ambush?" someone asked. Torin shook his head. "We trap." They welded emergency doors half open, creating a funnel. They flooded the floor with industrial lubricant. Then they rigged overhead pipes to dump freezing coolant. When the first car soldiers entered, their heavy armored boots hit the slick floor. They slid. Then the coolant dropped like rain. Car armor, designed for intimidation and direct fire, was not designed for sudden thermal shock. Joints froze. Visors fogged. Servos locked. The colony team didn't need big guns. They needed timing and courage. They swarmed the immobilized soldiers, pulling weapons away, locking hands, sealing helmets with foam packs. It wasn't glorious. It was survival. And it worked. The moment the car finally felt fear. Back in orbit, Drex Vor watched his fleet's order collapse under human trash tactics. A car officer spoke, voice unsteady. "Commander, this human ship is not fighting for territory." Drex's eyes narrowed. "Then what is it fighting for?" The officer swallowed. "People." Drex stared at the planet below, at a colony that should already be ash. And for the first time, the car commander understood something dangerous. Humans did not come to win a negotiation. They came to refuse a funeral. The secret the Council buried. The Galactic Council finally stopped discussing when car ships began exploding on live feeds. Emergency sessions were called. Angry speeches filled the halls. "Who authorized a human strike?" demanded one delegate. "No one," another replied, pale. "They moved without permission." A third delegate whispered the real fear. How did they get there undetected? Because the truth was ugly. The Council had known for years that humans were experimenting with something called null slip, a way to hide a ship by blending it into the background noise of space. The Council had laughed. They called it reckless. They called it impossible. They called humans childish for trying. Now a human warship had appeared inside a car perimeter like a ghost, and the Council's laughter tasted like ash. A human ship that shouldn't exist. On the Iron Promise, Mara walked the narrow bridge, listening to reports. "Drive core stable," said Ragil, surprised. Null slip cloak held longer than predicted. Juno's fingers trembled. "Captain, our hull plating is a patchwork. We can't take sustained direct hits." Mara nodded. "We won't." She stopped near a viewport. Below, Varnis Colony glowed weakly under its flickering dome. "Any message from the surface?" she asked. A comms officer smiled. Administrator Sale says the shelters are holding. They also say, thank you. Mara's expression softened for a moment. Tell them we're not done. Drex makes a choice. Drex Vor gathered what ships he could still control. Tangled vessels drifted, some crippled, some burning. He hated disorder more than death. But he also understood that humans had turned this battle into something the car were not built for. Still, pride was a chain. We crush the human ship, Drex ordered. Even if it costs us half the fleet. A subordinate hesitated. Commander, if we continue, we risk total loss. Drex's eyes hardened. Then we risk it. Because the Dominion did not retreat. Retreat was weakness. Weakness was death. The cleverest move is not the loudest. Mara watched the car ships form a desperate spear aimed straight at her. Captain, Juno said quietly, they're coming in tight. No tricks. All power. They want a decisive kill. Mara exhaled. Then we give them one. Juno looked up sharply. We can't outgun them. Mara's eyes were calm. We don't need to. She tapped the console. Open external bay doors. Ragil blinked. Captain, that's our last reserve. Yep, Mara said. And it's perfect. From the Iron Promise's belly, a large object drifted out, dark, irregular, almost like space junk. Drex saw it and scoffed. What is that? Debris. The object tumbled slowly. Then it opened like a flower, revealing a ring of bright nodes. A car officer screamed, "Gravity spike!" Too late. The ring activated, an experimental human device designed for deep space construction. It created a temporary, localized gravity field. Not strong enough to crush ships. Strong enough to pull them slightly off course. In a tight formation, slightly was deadly. The car spear wobbled. Ships bumped. Shields flared. Angles broke. And then, because humans were cruel in a very practical way, the Iron Promise broadcast a false car command code through the reflective sensor field. Half the car ships fired at the wrong targets. The spear shattered itself. Drex watched it happen and felt something snap inside him. Not fear. Certainty. The same certainty Sale had felt days ago. This battle could not be won the car way. A door opens on the planet. On Varnis Colony, the dome stabilized for the first time in days. People in shelters listened to the distant booms and felt the air stop shaking. Sale stood at a shelter entrance, staring at a surface monitor. A child asked softly, "Are we still going to die?" Sale knelt, voice gentle. "Not today." Above them, the car carrier that had threatened the city drifted, broken. The sky was still burning, but now, it burned with enemy wreckage, not helplessness. The moment humans become legend. Mara's ship took a hard hit. The bridge shook. Lights flickered. Juno shouted, "Hull breach on deck 4. We're losing atmosphere in the aft corridor." Mara steadied herself. "Seal it. Patch it." Ragil looked at her. "Captain, why risk this? Earth didn't ask you to. The Council didn't order you." Mara's answer came without hesitation. Because someone sent a message that said they accepted extinction. And no one should ever have to accept that. She looked at the planet again. Not while we still have hands to build and brains to cheat the odds. Drex finally understands. Drex Vor watched the human ship, scarred, battered, still standing. The car fleet was bleeding. The planet was not taken. The Dominion's certainty was gone. A subordinate whispered, "Commander, withdrawal." Drex's jaw clenched. He wanted to refuse. But he had learned something painful. Humans were not strong because of their ships. Humans were strong because they kept deciding to show up. Drex spoke the word that tasted like poison. Withdraw. The order went out. Car ships began to retreat, dragging the wounded. Varnis Colony remained. Alive. And the galaxy, watching in stunned silence, realized it had misjudged the youngest species in the room. The colony that refused to die. Days later, Varnis Colony smelled like smoke and melted stone. But it also smelled like food again. Emergency kitchens ran. Water pumps worked. Children stepped outside and saw a sky that was finally just sky. Administrator Sale RHYKK stood in a rebuilt command hall, staring at a new message queue. Thousands of incoming transmissions. From governments. From corporations. From the council. Most said the same thing. We regret we could not act sooner. Sale deleted them without reading further. Then Sale opened one message marked simply, from ECS Iron Promise, Captain Vance. The message was short. You're still here. That's the point. Keep building. Sale felt tears threaten, and didn't fight them. Humans don't ask to be worshipped. A council delegation finally arrived, late, polished, embarrassed. They expected humans to demand seats, territory, power. Instead, the human ship stayed in orbit only long enough to unload supplies. Medical kits, repair drones, water purifiers, portable generators. Human crew members worked beside colony engineers without lectures or pride. They didn't call it charity. They called it help. A council official approached Mara via hololink, face stiff. Captain Vance, your actions risked wider war. Mara's expression stayed flat. Yeah. Extinction is risky too. The official frowned. The council must review your... Mara cut in. Review this. You watched people die while you discussed. We acted. Varnis is alive. You can send me paperwork later. The hololink ended. Sale almost laughed. A child's question, a human answer. On the surface, Sale walked with Mara through a damaged park where trees had been burned down to black sticks. A young alien child, one of Sale's colony, stood near a broken fountain, holding a piece of melted glass like a treasure. The child looked up at Mara and asked, "Why did you come?" Mara crouched to the child's height. Because someone asked for help. But everyone asks, the child said. And nobody comes. Mara's voice softened. Yeah. That's a problem. Humans are bad at ignoring problems. The child frowned, trying to understand. Does that make you good? Mara smiled, small and real. It makes us stubborn. The real weapon. Back on Earth, the news spread fast. Not just of victory. Of method. Humans didn't beat the car with a bigger empire. They beat them with smart debris. Reflective sensor traps, foam nets, gravity misdirection, cheap metal rods, and the most dangerous resource of all, refusal to quit. Recruitment centers filled, not with people hungry for glory, but with engineers, welders, coders, medics, builders. People who heard the story and thought, if the galaxy won't protect the weak, we will. The council tried to control the narrative. They failed. Because the feeds showed everything. A human ship appearing from nothing. A world refusing to die. Drex's report. In car space, Drexvor stood before the Dominion's High Council. The elders demanded explanations. Drex spoke simply. Humans use weakness as camouflage. They weaponize what others dismiss. An elder hissed. So you lost to a single human ship. Drex met their gaze. No. He pointed to the star map. I lost to a species that does not accept normal. The chamber fell quiet. Because the car had built their empire on normal. On fear. On predictability. Humans were none of those. The final broadcast. Administrator Sale made one final message, this time not a plea, but a statement. This is Varnis Colony. We survived. Not because the galaxy saved us. Because humans refused to let us be erased. Sale looked directly into the camera. If you are out there, hiding, bleeding, waiting for the end, send the call anyway. A pause. Someone might answer. And if it's humans, your story isn't over. Above, the Iron Promise turned slowly in orbit, scarred, patched, alive. Mara stood on its bridge and watched the planet shrink beneath her. Juno approached quietly. "Captain, where to next?" Mara's eyes stayed on the stars. "Wherever the galaxy is pretending not to hear." The ship's drives hummed. Space bent. And the Iron Promise vanished into the dark, going toward the next impossible place. Because humans don't just arrive from nothing. They arrive from no. And they keep saying it, again and again, until the universe finally listens.